The wind was cold and quiet that morning. Snowflakes fell slowly from the sky, floating like tiny feathers. The sun had not risen fully yet. The land looked pale and empty. A lone cowboy rode along a narrow trail on the edge of a high canyon. His coat was thick, his hat pulled low, and his boots dusty from miles of riding. His name was Coulteridge, but most just called him Ridge. He was not the kind of man who stopped for anything. Not anymore. He had lost too much, seen too much. Now he only rode alone, kept to himself, and spoke little. The trail was dangerous, with sharp rocks and steep drops. But Coulter didn't fear the land. The land had already taken everything from him once. Then he saw her, a little girl. She stood in the middle of the trail, barefoot. Her skin was red from the cold. Her dark hair was tangled and blown by the wind. Her dress was too thin for the winter. She looked no older than 5. Her arms were wrapped around something small, pressed close to her chest. Coulter pulled the reins and stopped his horse. He stared at her. She didn't move. She didn't cry. She just stood there like she had been waiting for him all night. "What are you doing out here, girl?" he asked, but his voice was more wind than words. The girl lifted her head. Her eyes were dark, tired, and full of something too big for a child to carry. She held out what was in her arms. It was a small bird, half frozen, stiff and quiet. Not alive, but she still held it like it mattered. Then she spoke. Her voice was quiet, too quiet. "Please, save my mama." Coulter blinked. For a moment, he thought he heard wrong. "What?" She didn't answer. She turned around and started walking toward the cliff's edge. Her steps were slow, strange, like she wasn't afraid, like she had already seen worse than death. Coulter got off his horse. He followed her. His boots crunched in the snow. Every step felt heavier than the last. He didn't know why he followed her. Maybe it was the way she said, "Mama." Maybe it was something in her eyes. When they reached the cliff, the girl stopped. She pointed down. "There," she said, below the ridge, lying twisted in the snow, was a woman. Her dark dress was torn. One boot had come off. Her legs were bent wrong. Her face was pale. Blood had spread on the snow around her like red paint. But she was breathing. Barely. Coulter's breath caught in his throat. He looked at the girl. She was watching him with eyes that didn't belong to a child. "Name's Mercy," she said. "She's my mama?" Coulter nodded slowly. Then he knelt at the cliff's edge and started to climb down. The snow was deep, the rocks slippery. His hands got cold quick, but he didn't stop. He reached the woman and touched her face. She was cold, but not gone. Her chest moved up and down very slowly. Her lips were cracked. One wrist was swollen, and her hair was wet with blood. He lifted her into his arms gently, like picking up something made of glass. The snow rose around his boots as he climbed back up. His legs shook from the weight, but he didn't let go. The girl, Mercy, was waiting at the top. She didn't ask if her mama was alive. She just looked at Coulter. "She don't talk much anymore," Mercy said. "Not since they did it." "Who?" Coulter asked. His voice was rough. Mercy didn't blink. "Her brothers, my uncles. They said she cursed the land 'cause she gave birth to a girl. So they threw her." Coulter stared at the girl. He didn't know what to say. He looked down at the woman in his arms. She couldn't have been more than 30. She had a young face, even with all the pain. Her eyelashes were long, frozen with tiny bits of snow. One side of her face was bruised. "They said if she lived," Mercy said flatly, "then it was God's doing. If not, then she had it coming." Coulter didn't reply. His mouth was dry. He wanted to walk away. He had done that before, walked away from people, from pain, from trouble. But Mercy reached out and touched his coat with one small, cold hand. "She's a good mama," she whispered. "I swear she is." Coulter looked down at the girl's hand. Tiny, shaking, but strong. He nodded Dot without a word. He lifted the woman higher, walked to his horse, and placed her across the saddle. He helped Mercy climb up behind him. Then he led the horse away from the canyon. They crossed 3 ridges, through a patch of black trees, until they reached his cabin. It was small, hidden, and forgotten by the world. Just like him, he opened the door and carried the woman inside. He laid her on his bed, took off her wet clothes, cleaned her wounds with warm water. Mercy stood beside him, handing him rags, holding her breath, doing everything like she had done it before. "She'll be okay?" she asked, voice trembling. Coulter looked at her, then back at her mama. "I don't know," he said, but he was going to try. That night, the fire burned brighter than it had in years. Snow piled against the windows, and the wind moaned outside like an old ghost. But inside, there was warmth. A man, a girl, and a woman fighting to live. Mercy sat on the floor, still holding the little frozen bird. "She was just trying to love me," she whispered. Coulter didn't answer, but he stayed close. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel so alone. The wind screamed outside like an old wolf looking for something to break. But inside the cabin, it was quiet. Only the crackle of fire and the soft breathing of a wounded woman could be heard. Coulteridge moved slowly, careful not to make too much noise. He didn't want to wake her. She needed rest. Eliza May. That was her name. He had learned it from the girl. Mercy slept beside the fire, her small body curled up like a kitten. Her dress was still torn at the edges, her feet bruised, but she hadn't complained. Not once. She had sat by her mother's side all day, touching her hand, wiping her forehead, and whispering things no child should ever need to whisper. "She's strong," she had said, "even if they hate her." Coulter watched the child sleep and thought about the words she said. He didn't know much about children. He didn't have any. But Mercy was different. She had an old soul. She didn't ask for toys or sweets. She only wanted her mama to live. Coulter stirred the fire and looked at the bed where Eliza May lay. Her skin was pale, and her lips had no color. Her leg was still swollen, and one side of her face had turned purple. But her chest moved, slow but steady. He sat by her side and listened to the wind outside. He had lived in this cabin for 6 years, alone, ever since his brother died in the war. He had come to the woods to forget, to stop feeling. But now, with a broken woman in his bed and a child sleeping on his floor, the silence inside him was breaking too. The next day, Eliza woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking like she didn't know where she was. Coulter gave her a cup of warm water. She held it with shaking hands. "Why?" she whispered. "Why what?" he asked. "Why'd you help me?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at Mercy, who was outside trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe 'cause she asked." Eliza stared at him. Her eyes were tired, full of fear and sorrow. "You don't know me." "No," Coulter said, "but I know enough." She looked away. Her hand trembled as she set the cup down. "They'll come," she said softly. "My kin. When they find out I lived, I figured." "I'm sorry. For what?" "For bringing trouble to your quiet place." "You didn't bring it," he said. "It followed you." He stood and walked to the fire. He didn't know what else to say. He wasn't good with words. But he didn't want her to feel like a burden. That evening, Coulter went out to hunt. He brought back a rabbit and some herbs. When he returned, he found Mercy trying to cook with a pan too big for her hands. The meat was burned, but she smiled when she saw him. "I tried," she said. "You did good," he replied. That night, they ate together, one man, one girl, and one woman who could barely sit up. It wasn't much, but it felt like a feast. As days passed, Eliza grew stronger. She still needed help to walk, and her left leg bent strange, but she cleaned when she could. She used a rag tied to a stick to sweep the cabin floor. She never asked for help, and Coulter never offered, unless she was too tired to stand. Mercy helped with everything. She brought water from the stream, gathered kindling, even cleaned the wounds on her mama's leg without blinking. She didn't act like a little girl. She acted like a soldier. Sometimes Coulter would find her standing outside in the snow, arms crossed, eyes watching the woods like she was waiting for something. Or someone. "They'll come," she said one day, repeating her mama's words. Didn't ask who. He knew. One evening, Eliza sat on the bed, watching the fire while Coulter fixed a broken chair. "You don't talk much," she said. "No need to," he replied. "You always live alone?" "Since the war. Since my brother died. I'm sorry." Coulter gave a small shrug. He didn't want to talk about the past. Not his. Not hers. But still, it sat between them, heavy and cold like the snow outside. That night, Coulter found Mercy crying beside the bed. She held her mama's hand tight and whispered something over and over. "Please don't go. Please stay." Coulter knelt beside her. He put a hand on her back. "She's not leaving," he said. "How do you know?" "'Cause she's too strong." Mercy looked up at him. Her cheeks were wet, her eyes wide. "You promise?" He didn't speak. He just nodded. Sometimes words weren't enough. Spring was still far away, but the snow started to melt a little. Around the cabin, Coulter made Eliza 2 crutches from thick tree branches. She used them to walk slowly to the porch. The sun touched her skin for the first time in weeks. "I miss this," she said, eyes closed. Coulter stood beside her, arms crossed. "I'll build a garden here," she said. "If you let me stay?" He didn't reply, just handed her a cup of warm tea. That night, Eliza cooked for the first time. Just beans and cornbread. But it tasted like something from a better life. Mercy laughed for the first time since arriving. Coulter watched her, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. He didn't remember the last time he heard laughter in his cabin. Maybe never. Later that night, as Mercy slept and Eliza sat sewing near the fire, Coulter looked at the room around him. It used to feel so empty, so cold. Now it didn't. He didn't say it out loud. But deep down, something inside him whispered, "This ain't trouble. This is family." The days passed slowly, and the cabin grew warmer. The snow outside still covered the trees and hills, but inside there was something softer now. Coulter didn't say much, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. Eliza May was walking better. Her legs still hurt, and she still needed the crutches Coulter made, but she moved around the cabin with care and purpose. She cleaned, cooked, and even laughed sometimes. Mercy stayed close to her, never far from her mother's side. She watched the world with quiet eyes, always alert. They lived simply. Coulter hunted and brought back meat. Eliza cooked. Mercy fed the fire and carried water. There was not much, but they shared what they had. It felt like they were building something like home. But peace doesn't last forever. One morning, Eliza stood on the porch. The sun was rising, and the snow was shining like silver. She leaned on her crutch and stared at the hills. "They'll come soon," she said. Coulter stood behind her, holding a mug of coffee. He didn't say anything, but his jaw tightened. "They always come," she whispered. When they know a woman lived after they tried to kill her, they come to finish the job. Coulter looked at her. You don't have to be afraid now. Eliza turned her head slowly. I'm not afraid for me. I'm afraid for Mercy. Later that evening, Coulter cleaned his rifle. He hadn't used it in a long time. He oiled the barrel, checked the sights, and loaded it with slow hands. Mercy sat on the floor beside him, watching. Will you shoot them? She asked. If I have to, he said, even if they're family? They stopped being family when they threw your mama off that cliff. Mercy nodded, her face still. 3 days later, the knock came down. It was a hard knock, sharp and loud. It echoed through the quiet cabin like thunder. Coulter stood up slowly. He placed his coffee cup on the table and walked to the door. Mercy grabbed her mama's hand. Eliza's face went pale. Coulter opened the door. 5 men stood outside, all on horses, all with rifles. The one in front had a square jaw and cold eyes. His name was Wade Carroll, Eliza's cousin. You got something don't belong to you. Reach, Wade said. Coulter didn't answer. He stepped outside, pulling the door. Shut behind him. She's not a thing, Coulter said. She's a person. Wade spit in the snow. She's a curse. You know it. She brought famine to our valley. Pestilence. You're protecting a sin. She didn't bring nothing but life, Coulter said firmly. Another man behind Wade grunted. We can raise the girl right. Give her a proper home. Mercy ran out the door. Her small feet hit the snow. She wrapped her arms around Coulter's leg. She don't belong to you, she shouted. One of the younger men looked uncomfortable. She's just a kid. Wade raised his voice. She's better off with kin. We'll raise her proper. Teach her right. Coulter stared at Wade, calm but solid. You're not taking either of them. Wade laughed, but it was short and bitter. You think you can stand against all of us? Eliza May stepped outside, her crutches shaking under her weight. Sweat covered her brow, but she stood proud. If you want me, she said, her voice strong, take me. Leave the girl and the man. Don't, Coulter said, looking at her. No, she said. I won't let them take her. Wade raised his rifle. Then it happened. A gunshot cracked the air. One of the younger men had panicked and fired. The bullet missed Eliza's chest, but shattered her crutch. She screamed as she fell to her knees. No, Mercy screamed. Coulter moved like lightning. He scooped Eliza into his arms and carried her inside. Then he stepped out again, rifle in hand. He didn't raise it, but it was loaded and ready. You shoot again, he said quietly, and I'll show you what a real curse looks like. The men froze. Snowflakes fell between them like ash. The silence was loud. Wade looked at Eliza, crying but proud. He looked at the girl, clutching the cowboy's coat. Then he looked at Coulter, calm but burning. He turned his horse. Let them rot, he muttered. Ain't no saving folks like them. The other men followed him. One of them looked back at Mercy. He didn't say anything, but his eyes weren't as cruel as Wade's. When they were gone, Coulter went inside. Eliza sat on the floor, her hands shaking. Mercy sat beside her, hugging her tight. That night, no one spoke. A fire burned low. Coulter sat with his rifle beside the door, watching the snow fall outside. His jaw was clenched, and his heart was beating slow but heavy. Eliza stitched the ripped fabric on her coat. Her hands moved slow but steady. Mercy curled up beside the fire, her head on a small pillow Coulter had made for her. They didn't talk about what happened. They didn't need to. But something had changed. This time, they hadn't run. This time, they had stood and stayed. The snow melted slow that spring. It didn't rush like in the old years. Instead, It took its time, like it was watching over the cabin, making sure everything inside had survived the cold. Eliza May could walk now, even without her crutches. Her legs still bent a little when she stepped, but she no longer needed to hold the walls for balance. She moved like someone who had been broken, but refused to stay down. Mercy was growing, too. Her cheeks weren't so pale anymore. She laughed more often, ran faster, and even made a swing with rope and a tree branch just outside the cabin. She called it the flying rope, and when she flew back and forth on it, her hair would catch the wind like black ribbon. Coulteridge, who used to speak little and feel less, was changing too. He spent more time on the porch, less time hiding in his thoughts. He built things with his hands: a table, shelves, a new water bucket, and even a third chair for the porch. Not because anyone asked him to. He just wanted to. The cabin didn't feel like a hideaway anymore. It felt like a home. One warm morning, Mercy was feeding the chickens she and Coulter had raised from chicks. She was barefoot in the grass, humming a little tune she had made up. Eliza stood near the garden bed, pulling weeds gently from the soil. Her back still hurt some days, but she smiled through it. Coulter watched them both from the doorway. His arms were crossed, his eyes soft. "You could stay," he said quietly. Eliza looked up. "I already have," she said. Coulter didn't smile, not fully, but something in his face relaxed, like he had been waiting years for those words. That night, after the fire had gone low, they sat together. Coulter read from a small book he had kept in the loft, an old-school primer. Mercy sat on his lap, her head leaning on his chest, listening closely, even though she already knew the words. Eliza stitched the last patch on Coulter's coat. Her hands moved slow but sure, her needle gliding through the fabric like it belonged. Their dot outside, the wind whispered through the trees, but it didn't howl anymore. It was softer now, kinder, almost like it had forgiven them. "Why didn't you walk away?" Eliza asked suddenly, her voice low. Coulter looked at her. The firelight danced in her eyes. "I've done that before," he said. "Too many times." "And this time?" I saw Mercy's face. "And yours. I just couldn't." Eliza reached over and touched his hand. Her fingers were small, rough, and warm. "You saved us," she whispered. Coulter didn't answer right away. He looked at the sleeping child in his arms. "Maybe," he said, "you saved me too." The next morning, Coulter took the old saddle and fixed it up. He placed it on the horse and let Mercy ride for the first time. She grinned so wide her face hurt. She called the horse Stormy, even though he was calm and slowed out. Eliza stood nearby, watching. Her eyes were full of pride and something deeper, something that looked like hope. As days turned into weeks, things became more settled. They planted beans, onions, and carrots. Coulter built a small fence around the garden to keep out wild rabbits. Mercy painted flowers on the fence with a piece of red stone. Sometimes, at night, Eliza would still sit by the window and look out into the dark. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked once. "They might," Coulter said. "And if they do, we'll still be here." Eliza didn't speak for a moment. Then she nodded. "That's enough." By summer, the hills turned green. Birds returned to the trees. The creek near the cabin sang louder. Life had come back to the land. One morning, a rider passed through. A stranger. He didn't stop, but tipped his hat at Coulter, who was fixing the gate. News always found a way to travel, and Coulter knew Wade, and the others had likely told their side of the story, but no one else came. Maybe they were too ashamed. Maybe they were afraid. Or maybe they realized that Mercy and her mama didn't need to be saved anymore. They had already found what they needed. One evening, Coulter sat on the porch with Eliza beside him. Mercy was chasing a chicken around the yard. Giggling loud enough to make the trees laugh with her. Eliza reached out and took Coulter's hand. This time, he didn't flinch. He held it back. "You ever think we'd end up like this?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I'm glad we did." A silence settled between them, not heavy, but peaceful. "She used to cry every night before," Eliza said, "back at the old house. She used to hide under the bed when they shouted." "She doesn't hide anymore," Coulter said. "No," Eliza smiled. "Now she runs toward joy." The sun began to set. The sky turned gold, and the shadows stretched long across the porch. "Thank you," Eliza said softly. "For what?" "For giving us a place. For not letting go." Coulter looked out at the field. Mercy waved at him, her smile wide and wild. "I didn't give you a place," he said. "You made it one." Later that night, the stars came out, bright and clear. Mercy curled by the fire, holding the soft pillow Coulter had sewn for her. Eliza rested in the rocking chair, half asleep, her hands still holding Coulter's coat. Coulter sat in the third chair, his boots stretched toward the warm fire, eyes on the glowing coals. He didn't speak, but his heart did. Maybe he had been riding away from something his whole life. And maybe, just maybe, a girl's whisper and a dying woman's breath had been the thing that turned him back.